Welcome, everyone. I'm Seamus. We're going to talk about leather care. For me, that's mostly shoes, but most of leather care applies whatever it is. I will do it at the end. I have a PDF of general tips. It's not like an instruction booklet, but it's some general tips and some references to places where you can buy some things. So I'll figure out how to upload that to you all, to the host, to make it available in whatever way they can. Okay, so leather care. I guess the biggest thing I want to make sure, well, let me stop real quick. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes. We have a yes.
Okay, excellent. I didn't want to get 20 minutes in and then people can't say, I can't hear him. Okay, perfect. Anyway, I guess the overarching thing I want you to remember about leather care is it has to be dry when you store it. That sounds obvious, but when people bring me things to fix or they want advice, it's almost always been stored wet. So our first rule of the day, store it dry, whatever else you're going to do, okay? Obviously, shoes get kind of funky. That's my main thing. But your armor bag, I think it says in my PDF, your armor bag stinks because it's wet. Put away wet. Experienced fighters know they got to leave that stuff out so it dries. Okay, so what are you going to need to take care of stuff? I'm going to talk about shoes mostly, but it applies to just about anything else. I'm going to move periodically so I can show you bits a little closer to the camera. So that'll be a little wonky, but I want you to be able to see stuff. Like a pair of slippers that my wife wears at Penzig that got stored wet for some reason, and you can see they're kind of crusty, a little moldy. You can't see them that well. They're not that great. Yesterday, I cleaned this one up. So it's back to nice clean leather, no dirt, it can be stored, should be able to come out just fine. How do we do that? All right, pretty simple. Again, this would apply to a belt, to a pair of shoes, whatever you got. I have a variety here, brushes, stiff-ish bristled brushes, say that 3 times fast. Don't use metal or anything like that, but a fairly stiff nylon brush is just what you need to make sure you brush off all the dirt from whatever you've got, whether it's a belt, whether it's a jerkin, whether it's a pair of shoes, doesn't matter. We want to get the crud off of our project piece, whatever that is. But that's not complicated. So hopefully it's dry. Probably not going to be able to do this day. I've got to let it dry first. Make sure you get in all those seams. If you've got a pair of shoes, maybe there's a seam where the sole. If it's a belt, is there a turn where it's riveted together over a buckle? There's going to be a seam there. You're going to want to get in any of those bits. All right, so we've got it dusted off. We're good. The next secret, if you've got mold, is vinegar. You're going to want to put some vinegar on whatever. It's not going to hurt the leather because we're going to fix it later. I'm going to spray this over here so I don't spray it on my table. But we're going to want to spray a decent amount all over our leather. And I'm a fan of cotton rags, have lots of them around. Paper towels I don't like because they leave bits. Old sweats and sweatshirts, they often leave bits. So t-shirts and old sheets are really just the thing. So we've used our vinegar, which takes away most of our mold. It'll take away all of our mud because it's another liquid. I probably should do the inside of this while we're at it. No reason to do a not so great job. So anyway, vinegar, readily available, white vinegar. I've never used the other kinds of vinegar, apple cider, all that. I would imagine they work, but plain distilled white vinegar that you can buy by the gallon or smaller at your grocery store. So that should kill anything that's on it if it got moldy. If it didn't get moldy, you can skip that step. If, let's say, it's just a shoe or a belt that's just got a little crusty mud on it, we're going to want to get rid of the mud. You can use maybe a moist cloth if the brush didn't get it all off. You don't want to make it too wet to get off the rest of the mud. Once you have it clean and dry-ish, now we want to make sure it stays in good shape. I don't have them out here. Excuse me. I'm fixing a pair of boots for a fellow who likes the crusty look, but he's let them get crusty for years, and leather will dry and crack and disintegrate. if that happens after a certain amount of time. So what do we do after we get it dry and clean? Well, we've got a few options. The option I like is mink oil, readily available at shoe repair places, the shoe section usually, and any store where you can get shoe polish and laces, and nowadays it's usually just a small display. You can get it online too. $6, maybe $7 for a can like that. Anyway, so we need to re-moisturize basically. So mink oil is pretty straightforward. Simple rag. We have our can. We rub a bit on our rag, and then we just rub it in all over. You don't need a ton, but you want to make sure you cover it all. And then if you did get a ton on there, you'll take a clean cloth and buff it a bit. It might give it a bit of a shine, but mostly that'll go away. So that will re-oil it essentially and make it ready to go. If you got way too much on there, you'll have to buff for a while. The only thing I like to remind people about mink oil or any oil is it's going to darken your leather just a bit. So if you have something that's a very specific color that you want to make sure stays a specific color, you might want to test your mink oil on an underside. A scrap piece if you have it is good. But just be aware of mink oil or any oil is going to darken it a bit. Some of the leather top coat things from leatherworking that you put on belts and other things, a little less so. Again, this is in my handout that I'll make sure I get uploaded later. I'm going to say Tokonole. It's a top coat that's from Japan, pretty popular. It tends not to darken as much. That's why I like to use it on unfinished things. It just gives an ever so slight sheen, but it's a lot more expensive. I wouldn't bother with that on the average leather project. The other one that's readily available is neat's foot oil. You can get that most places. I think you can get it online, just basically at Amazon or any leather supply store. 100% neat's foot oil, don't want to mix with anything else. I don't recommend olive oil or household oils. It's not common, but they can do funky things if they're stored for a really long time. Essentially turn rancid. Won't necessarily hurt your leather, but it might stink. Much better to stay with a shoe or leather care product. So one last thing about the mink oil or neat's foot oil. You've put it on, you've still got a lot there. What do you do with that? Well, you buff it. Many of you who are former military will know you can get cotton diapers in the PX in the shoe section because it's a great material for working with leather. Anyway, take that, wrap it around a shoe brush, which you can probably find in the shoe section, and just give it a buff. That just makes sure your oil will get sunk into your leather nicely. Simple step, don't have to do that, but if you've got a lot of oil there and it doesn't want to come off, can't wipe it off, a little bit of a buff. Okay, cleaning. Let me see if you can see this. I don't know how well the camera works. I fixed these for a fellow, and I'm going to stay in the light. The ones on this side, I used saddle soap. Can you see the difference? It's not great. Covering my mic, sorry. Trying to get these so you can see them. Like saddle soap, this one I'm about to talk about, this one I'm going to work on. So cleaning. Your leather or footwear is a little dirty. What are we going to do about that? Okay, let's talk about that. What we're going to do is use a very popular product called saddle soap. A variety of manufacturers make it. It's a leather cleaning paste. So you're going to use that to clean, not to demold. You're going to need to use vinegar for that. But if you just need to clean the schmutz off your leather, saddle soap. So how do you use saddle soap? You need damp or moist. I use rags again. You can use a sponge. You can use anything like that you like. So we're going to take our wet rag, hold it up into a convenient size, and then we take our saddle soap, get some on there, fairly simple, right? And smart man would have taken this lace off before we started, so you don't have to watch me delace it. We'll do that, fix that later. All right, so we have our saddle soap on our wet rag. Now, fill it up with your hand, or if it's a belt, on a table, doesn't matter. Now you're going to take your saddle soap and basically, sort of like you would wax a car. You're going to go in circles, get it good and moist, and then give it a good rub. This rubbing is what's going to give it a cleaning. So we're going to get it all in everywhere we can. Again, I'm working with shoes, so I'm going to work on the edges. I'm going to come all the way up the seams. I'm going to go in a circular motion and give it a good rub. Every once in a while, I usually divide a pair of shoes or boots into quarters or so. Front, back, left, and right. Circle, circle, circle. You can see it's a little darker because it gets wet. I'm doing this now because we're going to let it sit for a minute. Anyway, so we're going to go rub, rub, rub all over. Anywhere there's a good bit of dirt, make sure you take some time and rub a little more in circles. Again, much like waxing a car. That's really it for the saddle soap part. We're going to come back to that because we're going to buff it in a minute when it's done. So after you've finished all these things, this one I saddle soaped and cleaned. It's still in really good shape. That will be enough. I cleaned it. It's not dry. If it weren't, I would go to my neat's foot oil. Think of it as moisturizer. If you really need to clean something like very ingrained mud or dirt, a little rubbing alcohol will work. But remember, rubbing alcohol is going to work on leather just like it does your skin. It's going to dry it out. So after you've used this to clean something off, a really stubborn stain or dirt, which is fine, you're going to want to make sure, probably that same day, soon if not the same day, you go back to your mink oil or neat's foot oil and give it a good coating so it stays dry. I don't have those ones I'm fixing for the fellow, but leather, after years, you've probably got an old pair of shoes like that. If it doesn't get attention, it gets dry and crackly, and eventually they'll just disintegrate. And now you're going to need a new whatever it is you had. Let's go ahead and pause now for questions. What sort of leather work do you have in mind that you came to this class that you want to clean? Anyone? Bueller? Yes, yes. Jump in.
A lot of times, like leather collars and belts that you've received from someone, as the day gets older.
Could you start over? Say that again.
I may have to repeat the question. We'll see.
Okay, yeah. Distance is a problem with the microphones, I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me now, sir?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. So as you get leather belts or leather collars or any other type of leather that you're wearing, as the day gets warmer and you get moisture, sometimes when you take off the belt or the leather, there's a little bit of a stain from the leather. Now they sell products that you can seal the leather with, but that doesn't always work very well. Do you have any suggestions there?
Yeah, you've hit on a common problem. You're exactly right. There are all kinds of products we use on the back side of a strap, perhaps,
Right.
Or commercially dyed leather. Sometimes they're supposed to be a little better about that. I'm sorry to say, again, I think I know what I'm doing, but I don't have every answer. I'm unaware. Leather is a natural product. It's the skin of an animal. Yes, it can be treated. The stuff I make shoes out of is commercially dyed, but if it gets wet, it's going to do what we call crocking in leather. It's going to fade. So if there's something precious that the leather is going to touch, you just have to be aware of that and be careful. Again, hot day, you're out sweating, and the bag or perhaps jerkin or belt or strap or baldric potentially is going to bleed onto whatever is under it. The best solution for that is to make sure that it's backed with another piece of treated leather that's going to be more resistant to that. It's sort of lined. That's, again, like a belt. So another piece of leather on the other side that will be somewhat resistant unto itself. And then if it's treated with a top coat, it'll be even more resistant. You're not going to make it 100%. The only way to make it 100% is to use a non-natural product like naugahyde, which is basically plastic. So one of the things we live with a natural product of leather. I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
I've got a follow-up question to what he was talking about. When you have, like you say, you've been wearing leather, like leather armor or anything like that, you've been out, and if there's a lot of moisture in here, it dries out. And so you've got this salt encrusted leather. So basically you have to what's the process essentially cleaning and moisturizing it again, just like skin? Is that? Like,
yes, you hit on it, and that's a quite common problem. I don't have any shoes here that's that crusty. Armor, because it's body sweat, is very commonly gets crusty, or that's salt. Body salts are going to get crusty on the leather. It's the white scaly stuff you see on leather armor bits, whether it's Visby leather that's going around the neck or straps that are contacting the body. Quite common and easily solved with a good vigorous cleaning of saddle soap. That's the recommended cleaner for that. If you keep it often, you'll keep it away. If you let it go and go and go and go, that salt is pretty heavily encrusted and you're not going to get rid of it completely. But if you stay on it, you should be able to get rid of it. And again, after the saddle soap, you're exactly right. You need to go back now and moisturize just like you did your skin after a shower with my recommendations are neathfoot oil or mink oil. Those are readily available, easy to find. They'll do no harm. They're not terribly expensive, and they will certainly solve your problem. Did I answer that, I hope?
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
No other questions at the moment.
Okay, okay. Now I'm going to go back to that one that I put the works with saddle soap. I scrubbed it a bit. Now I'm going to go back to my shoe tools. Sorry, a lot of my stuff are shoe tools. But again, a shoe brush. You might not find that at somewhere like Walmart, but shouldn't be too hard to find. Certainly can find them online. Anyway, wrap a soft cotton cloth around it and back to our buffing. And once we're done with that, we'll get just a touch of shine. You probably don't want a lot of shine on your SCA shoes, but we will do the same thing to a belt or a jerkin or anything else. Now, your armor, you're probably not too worried about its general appearance. You just want to make sure it's clean, which we can take care of with the saddle soap. Anyway, so once we're done, I can't see it great, but we've gotten rid of our dirt and we're back to a fairly smooth, even tone. Didn't darken these too much. The saddle soap usually doesn't. The mink oil is the thing that's going to darken your leather. Again, a brown belt, brown piece of armor that goes around your body, a strap that goes around a piece of your body for armor. You're not going to worry about that too much. But if you have a peerage belt or an apprentice protege belt that's a very specific color or just a color that you like, again, mink oil, any oil, can definitely darken your leather. So test piece if possible, on the back perhaps. The one here that I have that will do that least is something somebody would typically use on belts. Put it up here closer so you can see it. I know I'm butchering the pronunciation, and I'm not reversed. T-O-K-O-N-O-L-E. I use this on belts a lot after tooling, bed stand that's not dyed or colored in any way. After you put it on and buff it off or just wipe it off, it gives just a slight sheen, a little bit of shine, but not a lot. I also use this for burnishing edges of belts, but that's beyond the scope of our discussion. I know I have an hour blocked, but I don't have a lot more material. Anything that I haven't covered, specific things you have that you wondered how to clean. Did I cover that, or do I need to?
I have leather, like leggings, half leggings, and they have bugs on them. That's saddle.
They have what on them?
Bugs. They're mostly
Okay.
for motorcycle use.
Oh, got it. Okay.
On them when you ride.
Yeah.
Saddle soap?
Yes. Well, pick the bugs off as best you can to start with. Just like like we talked about with a pair of shoes, we want to get the crud off first, the mud, the dirt, stuff like that, bugs in your case. And hopefully they've not embedded themselves and hurt your leather in any way. Big bugs, might leave a dent. But for cleaning, yeah, saddle soap it would be my suggestion. And then again, followed by some sort of moisturizer. Mink oil and neat's foot are my favorite. There are a million out there, and you ask 20 leather workers, you might get 20 answers. But these are the basics, and you can't really go wrong with them.
Can I use shoe polish to do that, or would it be better with mink oil?
Mink oil, shoe polish will basically kind of like a glaze. It will seal them a bit, but
Okay,
it won't really moisturize it.
okay, cool.
Now they make colored moisturizers. Those are shoe creams.
Well, they're black, so.
Right. Well, I mean, you can get a black one. So if you want to moisturize and there's some dings that you want to cover, the color,
Okay,
which could be if they're on the road, working like chaps, essentially, you might have some dings or whatever. There are shoe creams that will somewhat help moisturize, but shoe polish followed by mink oil, you'd be good.
okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an interesting question. I hadn't thought of it.
I've got a question for you, Master Seamus. If we're working with like a belt or something that's got maybe metal plaques or other sort of decorative bits, how best to clean the leather in and around those? Because cloth doesn't always sort of get in those crevices well.
Right. Bits, you mean like mounted pieces of brass or silver or pewter?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, unless you can take it off, which is unlikely. It's probably riveted on by the original maker. The best you can do, I would say, is to use a fine tip brush to use whatever cleaning you need to do. Now, is it just mud? It's a belt? Probably not. Maybe just a little bit of crud from the days. So a fine tip brush will get you up against the edges. And then for products up around those edges, Q-tips are good. That's what I use on things where I have to get it up against the edge. Your finger in a rag is a little blunt for that. So a Q-tip is a good choice for that. I can't imagine anything you're going to put on leather would hurt, brass or silver or pewter. That would be a concern, especially if you have some sort of jewel. I don't think any of us have anything terribly valuable, but if you have maybe some rubies or something, or some false, inexpensive stone, you'd want to make sure you don't get too much in that because it'll be hard to get it out. You're never going to buff it out. So just right up to the edge with a brush or a Q-tip. That would be my tip.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, yeah. Okay.
If something doesn't get really dirty, like how often should you moisturize leather?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It kind of depends on use, right? If it's only a Pennsic, do it after a Pennsic and you're probably okay. It also depends how you store it. If it's stored in your closet in a conditioned space, your house, and doesn't get in the sun a lot, as long as you put it away in good shape, you're probably fine. So if it doesn't get used and get sunlight and dirt and crud, just periodically when you take it out, a little on it. If you use it all the time, the absolute best advice, that is the most tedious, I'm sorry, is to give a slight top coating every time you have it out. So if it's something you wear a lot to regular weekend events, I would say give it a wipe of something dry to make sure it's there's no dust on it, and then give it a fine coating of whatever oil you've chosen to use. Buff that off. We don't want that oil rubbing on everything else. Put it back in the bag. A lot of people, sadly, with their SEA stuff, it goes back in a box, in a trailer, in a basement, in a garage, and that's how people bring me stuff that's moldy, because they put it away wet and they haven't touched it since last year. That's going to be a disaster. So it kind of depends how you store it. Dry, dry, dry. Moisturize periodically. I hope that answers that.
Yep.
Okay. I'm having flashbacks to my year of Zoom teaching. I haven't done it in a while. Pandemic.
Questions at the moment in this room?
Yep.
Yes, I see a hand.
Over time, my leather can tend to stretch out in places.
Wait, can you say that again? I'm stepping closer so I can hear my computer better.
I said, over time, my leather can tend to stretch in places from either wear or moisture. Is there a way to get it to go back to its original shape once it's stretched out?
I say to get it to stretch less.
To let it to return back to normal size?
Yeah, sorry, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why, people bring me shoes or belts and I punch extra holes for them because, they've either gotten bigger or they're leather stretched and now it needs to be cinched smaller. Yeah, it's a natural product. It's an animal product. It's going to stretch, less so depending somewhat on how it's made and what it's made of. So that's something to look at when you're buying things. Things that are lined in a couple of kinds of leathers, one on the outside, one on the inside, sewn together, are a little less likely to stretch. Not guaranteed not to stretch, but a little less likely. If it has already stretched, just make sure you keep it moisturized so you don't get too many crinkles, because sometimes that stretching will leave like crack marks. So we want to avoid that. So once something starts to stretch, make sure you keep it moisturized, just like our faces. Sorry, that's probably not the answer we were hoping for, but. All right, anybody else?
I have a light blue belt that has a stain on it.
Oh, okay.
Actually, it was from oil that was inside the edge of a belt knife.
Edge of a what?
A belt knife.
Oh, God, okay.
A belt knife. The inside of the leather of that was oiled.
Sure.
Transferred to my belt. Is there any way to get that out?
My initial answer won't make you happy, but generally no. The darker oil that was used in the blade, which you want to keep, then somebody had a good bit of oil in the sheath or on the blade itself to keep the blade in good shape. That's all good. But again, it got on something you didn't want. Try the saddle soap a couple of times. If it's a light bit of oil, it might lighten it some. If you really want to make sure it's all the same color, I would then go with some sort of oil to bring it all down to the color of the oil. The oil's probably made it a little darker, yes?
Yeah, it made it a lot darker.
Okay, so you might not want your whole belt to look that color. You could darken down to that color.
Okay.
So it would even it out, but it wouldn't be the same color blue that you have now, which is probably what you like. Yeah. So I would say chalk that one up to a, it's a lived-in look.
Yeah.
Yeah, because oil and leather in that way don't mix. It is going to leave a spot, and it's not going to come out.
Okay.
Sadly.
Thank you.
Sure. Sorry, I know that some of these answers are disappointing, but leather is what it is.
Yep.
You were going to give us some recommendations of places to get these products and.
Yes. Somebody help me. Remind me. I don't want to be full screen. I have it on my desktop here. I'll point down so you can see my head. That's very exciting. I have to share the document. Who do I share that with?
The best way is probably to email it to myself or to Lynn for Rum, and we can share it out to people who are interested. I can get a list of email addresses and share it out for you if you want. Or something.
Okay, that'll be helpful. Perfect. It's a I'm sorry, say that again.
That's probably the best way to do it, since everyone here is in person and probably not going to easily get access to something. Sure.
Yeah, right. And I don't see a bunch of laptops around the screen. So yeah, I get it completely. So I'll email it. I'll put it on my shoe website. I have a care and feeding page. I'll put it on there. Some of you probably are familiar with that. And again, I'll email it to the Rum staff too, so that it can be either distributed to you all who sign up for an email, sign up, make a list there. Sorry, I'm looking at my computer, not you.
If you're putting it on your website, do you want to share your website so that they'll easily be able to?
Well, sure. I wasn't going to do that. I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to hype my website, but armlann.com, ARMLANN.com. And there's a care and feeding page that's got stuff about different things that I sell. And this, I haven't put it there yet. I'll put it there today. It's a PDF. I think the title of it's Leather Care. I'll make sure it is that. So you can download it. It's got links to the few things that I talked about. The top coat. Sorry, stand up since I don't need to be on the floor. Links to the top coat stuff. Mink oil. Again, you don't have to get it from. I think I linked to Amazon just because that's convenience and ubiquitous. You can find these products just about anywhere. They're not unique to the source where I link to them. That's just so you can see a picture of it and you see the description. If you can find it somewhere else in your local store, great. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Depends where you live. I know in Chicagoland, where I used to live, the shoe finding store is all gone. City of 2 million people, 6 million people in greater Chicago area. You can't walk into a Tandy and buy a piece of leather. You can't walk into a shoe store and buy some of the repair things I need. So now that I'm in the middle of nowhere, I get stuff online, like probably everybody. You got to do what you got to do. I think that's it. Okay, so we answered the blue belt question. Any more specific leather questions? Most people probably came to the class thinking, oh, I had this thing. How do I handle that? Either I covered it, yay me, or...
You're getting a lot of nods for you've covered what they need.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say that again?
You're getting a lot of nodding heads. You've covered what they
Actually,
need.
I do have one question. Is there a
Sure.
difference between treating dyed leather versus painted leather?
I'm sorry, say that again. Difference between dyed or painted?
Dyed, painted, like if you use acrylics or whatever leather paint versus dyeing it, is there a separate process for cleaning that? I mean, because
Right.
the paint.
That's a really good question. Completely unrelated to shoes, which is my main thing, but that's a great question.
Painted.
Dyed leather, like your basic belt, like the blue belt we were talking about, or squire's belts or knight's belts or just brown belts that you wear. Dyed usually, no problem. Any of these things will work. They might darken it a touch. Painted, however, can be different. No matter how paint is put on leather, it's a little delicate. So depending on its use, you mentioned belt. So a belt's going to have a buckle and there's going to be a place there where there's some abuse where the leather overlaps. Presumably you don't have a painted design there. However, top coating painted leather, I would suggest something like this. Tandy makes lots of products that are designed to go over tooled leather, dyed leather, all those things. They're usually clear. You obviously don't want to buff something you've painted because you might take the paint off. So that's a really good question. Mink oil won't probably hurt it, but because I'd be scared I'd screw it up, I probably wouldn't do that. I would use something designed for a belt or a finish like that. Something clear. Tandy, I can't remember what the Tandy products are called, but they all have finish in the title. This stuff I happen to like, but there are lots of them out there. So it's a really good question. Painted, it's a little delicate, so you'd probably use something simple like a belt dressing you get from Tandy. Hope that answers that.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Yep.
I'm sorry, I joined late, so hopefully you didn't cover this already, but I have a quiver strap.
Yep.
It's really dry and cracking. It's still flexible. What would be the best way to re-moisturize it? And also,
yeah, the cracking you're not going to repair. That's already beyond a certain spot. But in general, I would say neat's foot oil is a little stronger, for lack of a better term, than mink oil. Mink oil is a good top coat, good moisturizer, but it sounds like if it's starting to crack a little bit, you need a little more. So I'd put a lot of neat's foot oil on it, let it soak, maybe do that a couple of days in a row, and then buff it off. And then keep an eye on it because you don't want that to break while it's in use. So, keep an eye on your cracks, but I would go with neat's foot oil.
Okay. And then the quiver itself is not cracking, but it probably is about 20 years old and needs some moisturizing. Would that be neat?
Sure. I mean, you can still use a neat's foot. Neat's foot's not really wrong in any context. It's just a little oilier than mink oil. So because it's something that is kind of old, and yeah, I'd probably go with neat's foot for the whole thing.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. But we can answer these kind of questions. That's why we're here. Does anybody have any armor that has that nice white crusty scale on either like the neck of a leather piece or the...
Not anymore.
Oh, did it disintegrate?
No, I replaced everything.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Shoes do that too. People bring me that all the time because you've got it's wet from the ground and your sweat, and it works. So I've seen that regularly. So whether they're mine or anybody else's, salt stains come from sweat, and so the saddle soap that we talked about today is going to be your best response to that. If it's ingrained deeply, it's really got a lot of salt. Probably going to take a few times. And sadly, any of you who've been in the military know you'll get that out and then it'll come back because you didn't get it out completely. And then you polish over it and then it comes back. So it can take a few tries sometimes. Okay, any more?
Questions? Comments?
No more? All right.
We have a very happy crowd here.
Okay, good. Well, people had some specific questions about their gear, which is kind of what I was hoping for. Most everybody has something specific that they want to take care of. So that's great. My email is on that sheet that's going to be emailed to Rum. So consider me a resource. You got a question? Email me. Let me know. Happy to help.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you very much.
Much appreciated, Master Seamus.
Okay, thanks much.
Enjoy.
Enjoy your day.
All right, thank you. Have another meeting later.